To whom had it happened? The vice president nodded for Cormorant to go ahead and speak. Thank you, sir. Gabe, keeping what I'm about to tell you to yourself probably constitutes a felony. You need to know that before I— Just spit it out, Dan. Gabe Reese liked Cormorant well enough, just not the way he pushed the bounds of his position. Tillman had brought both of them along, all the way up from the old days of Philadelphia politics, so there was some leeway to be expected here. It was just that Cormorant always seemed to make a little more of it than Reese thought he should. Then again, Cormorant probably thought Reese lived with a stick up his ass. Have you ever heard the name Zeus mentioned in any work-related context? The agent asks. Zeus as in the Greek god? Reese thought for a moment. Secret Service had revolving code names for all protectees, but that certainly wasn't a familiar one, and of course it would have to be a higher-up. He shook his head. I don't think so. Should I have? Cormorant didn't answer the question, merely continued. Over the past 6 months, there have been a series of missing persons cases all over the Mid-Atlantic region. Mostly women, but a few men too. And all of them in a certain profession, if you follow me, which I'm sure you do. So far, nothing's connected them. Until now, Reese inferred aloud. What the hell is going on? Our intel division has 3 separate communications intercepts linking this tag Zeus to 3 separate cases. Last night it came up again, but on a known homicide this time. He paused for emphasis. All of this is classified, of course. Reese felt his patience slipping fast. What does this have to do with the vice president, or the president? Since you've called me in, I'm not even sure we should be having this conversation. Tillman spoke up then, cutting through the bullshit as usual. This Zeus, whoever it is, has some kind of connection to the White House, Gabe. What? Suddenly Reese was up and out of his chair. What kind of connection? What are you saying, exactly? What the hell is going on here? We don't know, Cormorant said. That's the first part of this fucking problem. The second is shielding the administration from whatever this is going to be. Your job is covering the president and vice president, not the entire administration, Reese shot back, his voice rising. Cormorant stood firm, both arms folded across his chest. My job is to investigate and prevent any potential threat. Both of you, please, shut it! Tillman's voice rose to a shout. We are all together on this, or the meeting is terminated right now. You got that? Both of you? They answered in unison. Yes, sir. Dan, I already know what you think. Gabe, I want your honest opinion. I'm not at all sure we should keep this quiet. Could very easily come back to bite us, and we're not talking about censure or a slap on the wrist here. Not with this Congress. Not with the press, either. And surely not if this actually involves murder. Murder? Dear God, Reese thought. He ran a hand through his hair, which had been silver since his mid-20s. Sir, I'm not sure that an off-the-cuff answer to a question like this is in your best interests or the president's. Is this a rumor? Are there hard facts to substantiate it? What facts? Does the president know yet? The problem is that we know very little at this juncture. God damn it, Gabe, what does your gut tell you? I know you have an opinion, and no, the president doesn't know. We know. Tillman was big on gut, and he was right. Reese did already have an opinion. Going public is a bell that can't be unrung. We should find out what we can within a very limited time frame, say 2 or 3 days, or until you specify otherwise, sir, he added for Agent Cormorant's benefit. And we'll need an exit strategy, something to distance ourselves when and if any story comes out before we want it to. I agree, sir, Cormorant put in. We're way too much in the dark right now, and that is unacceptable. Tillman took a deep breath that Reese read as both resignation and assent. I want you two working together on this. No phone calls, though, and for God's sake, no emails. Dan, can you assure me that absolutely none of this goes through the crisis center? I can, sir. I'll have to speak to a few of my men, but it can be contained. For a while. Gabe, you mentioned exit strategies? Yes, sir. Think dimensionally here, all possible scenarios. Anticipate everything, and I mean everything. I will, sir. My mind is going about 1,000,000 miles an hour right now. Good man. Any other questions? Reese had already started scanning his memory for historical or legal precedent more out of habit than anything. There were no questions of loyalty here. His only reservation was situational. Good God Almighty. If there was a serial killer connected to the White House, any kind of killer, Sir, if there's word out on this, what's to keep anyone else, God forbid a reporter, from picking up on it? Cormorant looked offended, but he let the vice president answer. It's the Secret Service, Gabe. We're not talking about an open-source intelligence here. Cormorant stood down and Reese tensed. But that's not the kind of insurance I'm going to depend on either. I want this done fast, gentlemen, fast and clean and thorough. We need some real facts and clarity. We need to find out who the hell Zeus is and what he's done, and then we have to deal with it like it never happened.
Chapter 7. The punches kept coming. Hard ones. Despite the Rhode Island driver's license, Caroline had been living in Washington for the last 6 months, but she'd never tried to make contact with me. She had an English-style basement apartment on C near Seward Square, less than a mile from our house on 5th Street. I jogged by her building dozens of times. She had nice taste, Bree said, looking around the small but stylish living room. The furniture and decor had an Asian influence, lots of dark wood, bamboo, and healthy-looking plants. A lacquered table by the front door held 3 river stones, one of them carved with the word Serenity. I didn't know if that felt more like a taunt or a reminder. Caroline's apartment was nowhere that I wanted to be right now. I wasn't ready for it. Let's split up, I told Bree. We'll cover the apartment faster that way. I started with the bedroom, forcing myself to keep going. Who were you, Caroline? What happened to you? How could you die the way you did? One of the first things that caught my attention was a small brown leather date book on a desk near her bed. When I grabbed it, a couple of business cards fluttered out and onto the floor. I picked them up and saw they were both for Capitol Hill lobbyists, though I didn't recognize the names, just the firms. Half of Caroline's date book pages were blank. The others had strings of letters written on them starting at the beginning of the year and going about 2 months ahead. Each string was 10 letters, I noticed right off. The most recent, from almost 2 weeks before Caroline had died, was SODBBLZHII, with 10 letters. The first thing I thought of was phone numbers, presumably coded or scrambled for privacy. And if I asked myself why at that point, it was only because I was putting off an inevitable conclusion. By the time I'd gone through the big rosewood dresser in her walk-in closet, there was little doubt left about how my niece had been affording this beautiful apartment and everything in it. The top drawers were filled with every kind of lingerie I could imagine, and I have a good imagination. There was the more expected lacy and satin stuff, but also leather, with and without studs, latex, rubber, all of it neatly folded and arranged, probably the way her mother had taught her to organize her clothing as a kid. The bottom drawers held a collection of restraints, insertive objects, toys, and contraptions, some of which I could only guess about and shake my head over. Separately, everything I'd found was no more than circumstantial. Altogether, it got me very depressed, very quickly. Was this why Caroline had moved to D.C.? And was it the reason she died the way she did? I came out to the living room in a fog, not even sure I could talk yet. Bree was down on the floor with an open box and several photos spread in front of her. She held one up for me to see. "I'd recognize you anywhere," she said. It was a snapshot of Nana, Blake, and me. I even knew the date. July 4th, 1976, the summer of the bicentennial. In the picture, my brother and I were wearing plastic boaters with red, white, and blue bands around them. Nana looked impossibly young and so pretty. Bree stood up next to me, still looking at the photo. "She didn't forget you, Alex. One way or another, Caroline knew who you were. It makes me wonder why she didn't try to contact you after she came to D.C. The picture of Nana, my brother, and me wasn't mine to take, but I put it in my jacket pocket anyway. I don't think she wanted to be found, I said. Not by me. Not by anybody she knew. She was an escort, Bree. High end. Anything goes. Chapter 8. Back at the office, which was buzzing with activity and noise, I got word from Detective Fellows down in Virginia. Prints on the stolen car matched up to a John Tucci of Philadelphia, now at large. I played some fast connect the dots, from Fellows in Virginia to a friend at the FBI in Washington, to their field office in Philly and an agent, Cass Murdoch, who threw down another piece of the puzzle for me. Tucci was a known but small-time cog in the Martino crime family organization. That information cut both ways. It was a specific lead early in the case, but it also suggested that the driver and the killer might not be the same person. Tucci was probably part of something bigger than himself. Any guesses what Tucci was doing all the way down here? I asked Agent Murdoch. Bree and I had her on speakerphone. I'd say he was either reassigned or else moving up in the organization, taking on bigger jobs, more responsibility. He'd been arrested but never served time. The car was stolen in Philadelphia, Bree said. So then, yeah, he was working from home. Emphasis on the was. My guess is he's probably dead by now. After a screw-up like that, whatever the hell happened out there on I-95. How about possible clients in Washington, I asked. Does the Martino family have any regular business down here? Nothing I know of, Murdoch said. But there's obviously someone. John Tucci was too small-time to have drummed this up on his own. He probably thought he was lucky to get the assignment. What an asshole. I hung up with Murdoch and took a few minutes to scribble some notes and synthesize what she'd told us. Unfortunately, every new answer suggested a new question. One thing seemed pretty clear to me, though. This wasn't just a homicide anymore, and it was no individual act. Maybe it involved a sex and violence creep, but maybe it was a cover-up, or both. Chapter 9. There was more, of course, lots more. The kind of upsetting detail that keeps certain stories in the news for months, and some of it came right away for a change. Dr. Carbondale reached me in my car on the way home. Bree was driving her own car. Toxicology shows no known poisons in Caroline's system, Carbondale told me. No drugs of any kind, other than a .07 blood alcohol level. She couldn't have been more than tipsy at the time of death. So Caroline hadn't been on drugs, and she hadn't been poisoned. That wasn't much of a surprise to me. What about other causes? I asked Carbondale. I'm more and more certain that's going to be an unanswerable question. All I can do is rule out certain possibilities. There's no way of determining, for example, if she was beaten or strangled or... She stopped short. The words came out of me like bile. Or put right into that machine. Yes, she said tightly. But there is one other thing to tell you. I gritted my teeth and wanted to hit something with my fist, but I had to listen. We've isolated the remaining fragments. There's some indication of antemortem bite marks. Bite marks? I looked around for a place to pull over. Human bite marks? I think so, yes, but I can't be certain at this point. Biting can look almost identical to bruising, even under the best of circumstances. That's why I'm bringing in a forensic odontologist to consult. What we're working with is bone fragments where some of the tissue survived, so I can only see... I'm going to have to call you back, I said. I pulled to the side of Pennsylvania Avenue and just let people honk their horns and go around me. This was too much. The unfairness, the cruelty, the violence, all of those things I'm usually so good at dealing with. I threw my head back and cursed at the car ceiling, or God, or both. How could this be allowed to happen? Then I laid my head against the steering wheel and I started to tear up. And while I was there, I said a prayer for Caroline.